Hello and welcome to the third episode of our series Conscious Conversations, a series with conversations from familiar faces, with familiar faces from the Shiatsu community within the UK and beyond. Today we have our third guest, a man that doesn't need any introduction, Bill Palmer, has agreed to be our guest into tonight's interview, and I'm really excited to dive deep into the journey and to find out more about how Bill got into Shiatsu, to understand a little bit more about all the inspiring and amazing things that he has contributed within the Shiatsu community and beyond, and of course to give us a chance to gather some nuggets of wisdom from there and ask any questions towards the end of our conversation if you feel the need to. Please keep in mind that if you're catching the recording, you're still welcome to add the questions in the comments. I will make sure that all the questions are answered and you get the information that you need. And without further ado, Bill, I want to welcome you and to thank you from the bottom of my heart that you've agreed to do this interview with us tonight. Could you please introduce yourself and we can start a conversation.
Okay, hello, thanks. Yeah, I'm Bill Palmer, and I don't know how to introduce myself really. I've been wandering my own path, I think, for the last 50 years, and I often feel a bit like an alien in different groups because everyone's got a sort of group idea about what they're doing, and I seem to be slightly off piece, as it were. So, but I think my passion throughout those 50 years has been to work out ways of helping people to be conscious, and that's not only within the Shiatsu world, and also helping myself to be conscious, because I think a lot of our the way we operate in the helping professions actually puts people to sleep, sometimes, which is very nice, very relaxing and very nice. But in some way, I've been going in the just exploring the details of how we interact with people. So. Is that enough introduction?
It is. Allow me to add a few words to everything that you've mentioned. Your journey has been such an inspiration for so many Shiatsu practitioners and beyond, and you've had an incredible impact within the Shiatsu community. So Bill is a director of the School of Experiential Education, and he's been studying since 1973. So that's a very, very long time. And in our previous interviews, we had several discussions about the first meeting that ever happened within the Shiatsu Society. And if I'm not mistaken, you were part of that as well, right?
Yes, I mean, I don't know. I didn't listen to that recording, so I don't know what, but maybe it was Elaine that was talking about it. But actually, the first meeting was well, what was happening in the late 70s was that there were three of us who were teaching groups, and also there was some people in the East-West Center who were teaching groups. And I think it was in 1980 at Christmas, we had a party for all the groups, and they got together and they asked us to form a club so that they could practice and join up with each other. And none of us really wanted to do that. I mean, but then Harriet, who was one of the other teachers, found Elaine, and Elaine was willing to form the society, and then everyone started to come out of the woodwork. Up till then, I'd only heard of about 8 people who were interested in Shiatsu, and suddenly there were well over 100, and within a year or two, there were even many hundreds of people who were interested. So it was. I'm not sure the first meeting was that party, or whether it was when we'd actually formed the Shiatsu Society. Yeah. Yeah. So, but anyway, I think the main thing about that time, which I remember with great warmth, is that Shiatsu wasn't a profession. It was I think what we were doing was exploring ourselves and exploring relationship and how to be in contact with other people. And for me, anyway, the idea of it being a healing art was very secondary. I never thought of myself as being a Shiatsu practitioner or a Shiatsu professional. And that I think for the first couple of years at least, there was really no formal idea of training or of the schools started to spring up after the society was formed, and then in response to them springing up we felt we had to make some boundaries, so that but I think that's I can't say the word, the exploratory thing of exploring ourselves and just helping people to explore themselves was a real inspiration. And that's why we had hundreds of people interested at that time. And somehow the process of it becoming a profession it's been good, but on the other hand, it's put a lot of weight onto it so that I think it's less easy for people to be inspired to come to courses because they think that there's a lot to learn. There's a big weight of stuff to learn. So I'd really like some of that initial inspiration to come back into the Shiatsu world. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you mentioned that, and it's such an inspiring journey so far. It all started with 8 people, like you've mentioned, and then Shiatsu gradually became a profession. And now there are so many elements that contribute to what the Shiatsu Society and the Shiatsu community within the UK and beyond is today. So there's no wonder that you've been one of the pioneers of Shiatsu, and you are one of the pioneers of Shiatsu in Europe. And a lot of people are incredibly interested in everything that you've contributed to and you've experienced so far as well.
Well, I wonder whether that's true. I mean, I felt that the work that I've been doing in movement shiatsu is in some way not everyone's cup of tea, in the sense that there's what movement shiatsu is doing is helping people to be active, and exploring themselves rather than being treated. And I think there's two, for clients and for practitioners, there's two archetypes that we're working with. One archetype is of someone wanting, coming back to childhood in some way and saying, make me feel better, to their parent. And the parent saying, okay, darling, lie down and I'll make you feel better. So that's one archetype. And the other archetype is more like a coach, with someone saying, here, I've got this issue and I've been trying to work it out. I need some help to work it out. And it's not that I give you the answer, but that I help you to work out what the answer is yourself. And I think that second way is less popular. It's much, in some way, with culture as it is at the moment, people want answers, they want fixes, they want someone to tell them what to do and to follow. So that style of work is much more popular, much more, I think a lot of more people are follow that style. And I've always found that there's only a small group of people who are really wanting to explore what I'm suggesting, because it's hard work. It's not hard work in the sense of weighty, but you need to be on your toes. There's no rules to follow. You have to be really listening and creative all the time, helping people to, if you're following rules, then you're stopping them from being aware of themselves. You're imposing your rules onto them. So it's much more difficult. And I think I must say I don't think of one style as better than the other. You know, they're different. They suit different people. And some people really want just to relax and be relaxed and treated, and some people want to explore themselves. But with humanity as it is at the moment, that second group are smaller, definitely. So
I can appreciate that, and I am very glad that you've mentioned this, because when it comes to actually doing the work and taking responsibility for everything that happens within, there's no quick fix. No one is out there to save anyone. And just the fact that through movement shiatsu, there is an ability to guide someone towards their inner knowing, I think that's an extraordinary process. And I understand why many people would not be willing to do it, but hopefully in time and with everything that you've been doing so far, things will change and more people will come towards this as well.
I think it may take 200 years, and I'll be long gone.
I would like to be a bit more optimistic now. Let's hope that with all the activities that we do on social media, things will change.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if you, I, yeah, I think the future of humanity is in question really at the moment. We're we're going towards a crisis, and the crisis is because we're just following. You know, like social media is a force which people follow. You know, so that they're not thinking for themselves. They're not working out how to be authentic themselves. They're following fashion. So social media is something that amplifies that. But also I think the way in which culture is going is dividing into following this group or following that group, rather than actually what are we doing on this planet? What's the meaning of my life? And it's becoming more and more shallow. And I think that the human race is in a crisis at the moment, which needs people to grow up in a way that, you know, if I look at the world, I see we're in the state of being like a 2-year-old. And who I want this, I want this, I want this, I want to do this, and all this is fantastic, this is great, all this is terrible, you know, making all the judgments and just following emotion. And in some way, we're swarming around the planet and eating it all up, and I think it'll take a long time before we grow up as a human race. But I hope that what I'm trying to do in my life is to develop some tools by which people can help people to grow up. And not everyone wants to, but those people that want to, then people need the tools in order to help them. And I think we don't learn that normally in Shiatsu courses. We're normally working out how to treat people rather than help them to grow up. And I think that's what I can contribute in some way, is practical tools for helping people to grow up.
That's incredibly profound, and I would like us to take a moment to sit with this information, because you are right. Yes, it will take a very long time for humanity to grow up, and not many people are willing to do that, because it's a very difficult process, and it's much easier in the society that we live today to just scroll on our phones and get that instant boost of either dopamine or a direction, even though that direction may not be for us. And it's very easy to lose our true selves. We come into this world being exactly as we are, you know, our body will lead us to where we need to go, and then we become conditioned by everything from our environment.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yes. And I think in the, you know, the people in the shiatsu is really important as a potential because it's dealing with the body in a way that is, I think that, you know, this thing about following, like in social media, basically the brain mind is almost developed to follow. We evolutionary biologists think that the brain became so big as a result of us becoming socialized. So we have models of what other people think of us and models of them, and so I think the mind is easily hypnotized and easily drawn into following some fad or whatever. The body, on the other hand, is something that is very focused on keeping us individually, doing what's best for us individually, and becoming aware of the body, which touch does, is really something we can get back to reality. It gives us a reality check. But I think that one of the problems I find with the shiatsu training is we learn to speak another language than our clients. And that means that we as practitioners might be aware of something and understand something, but it's because we're speaking a language that doesn't really people don't really understand, then they can't apply it to themselves. They you know, even if you explain what stomach chi is or whatever, it's not really they're not relating it to their experience. So they then say, oh, what's wrong with me? What can I do? Rather than, oh, looking inside and seeing actually how what's going on in me and how can I do it from inside rather than being told from outside. So I think that if we could make what we're doing in shiatsu something that is accessible to everyone, easily accessible to the people that we're working with, then we can be a force for the evolution of the human race. But at the moment, I think we're touching the body as a force for the evolution of the human race, but the language that we use goes in the other direction. So
I appreciate you saying that, and yes, it would be a very important thing to prioritize, maybe to find a way to bring that language, to make it more accessible to people who are actually interested in doing the work. I appreciate that not many would want to do that, but if you are able to transfer all that information and to empower people to do that for themselves, then yes, there is more hope, and I love to hear that. I would like to go all the way back to the basics, and I'm wondering, how did Shiatsu come into your life, and how did you decide to pursue this path?
I broke my collarbone.
Oh.
That's how it came into my life. I was at university and I started going to a Aikido dojo near Regent's Park, and I loved Aikido. I did it 6 times a week, and then one time I fell badly and broke my collarbone, and my teacher, Aikido teacher, also did shiatsu. Very simple form of shiatsu. No theory, no meridians, hardly any points really. And he came and he touched me in one place, and I felt all of my the way in which my muscles were protecting and distorting around the wound, and I could adjust that. And he didn't change his touch. He just stayed in one place, and it was an amazing experience. And so I asked him to teach me, and he said no. He said he hadn't got much to teach, and but that I could watch him every now and again, because he used to work with us when we were injured, or when something was wrong. And so that went on to, basically I didn't go through a course. I just watched him for a few years, and then after a while, people in the dojo started to ask me to work with them, and friends and people I knew asked for sessions. And so that went on for about 6 years. And I was studying a bit of, I read some stuff from Chinese medicine and acupuncture. But it was only in the late 70s, really, when people started to come back from learning from other Japanese Shiatsu teachers in other countries, and we formed this group in the late 70s of we were meeting once a week and teaching each other, and it was then that I really got the breadth of Shiatsu, that there was lots of different forms and lots of different ideas, and had a very broad education through that group. And yes, and then 3 of us in that group started to teach, and then those groups got together, and then the Shiatsu Society formed, and so on and so on and so on. So yeah,
We've covered that for speed, yes.
That's how I started, yeah.
Oh, how amazing, how wonderful that you've had the chance to watch a teacher, a guide in action, and then to gradually progress on your journey and share Shiatsu with other people as well.
Yes. I mean, what was interesting, I think where movement Shiatsu came from was that Konetsuka actually, he was called Minoru Konetsuka, my teacher, but he was really teaching Aikido, but he often, when he was talking to me, linked Aikido with Shiatsu, and there were a lot of things that came from Aikido, from the principles of Aikido, that came into my Shiatsu. So, for instance, one good example is how I treat muscles. That instead of trying to relax a muscle or to stretch it or to make it change in any way, I listen to the direction that it's contracting and help it to go further in that direction. And that's really, it's not a trick to get it to let go. It's saying, okay, I'm listening to you, I'm hearing you. And sometimes I also ask the client to very gently contract it further, not make a big effort, but just to make what they're doing already conscious. And I think that's a principle of Aikido, that you're not trying to fight somebody. You're watching which direction they're already going, and you're helping them to go in that direction. And by helping them to go in the direction they're already going, you give the feeling that you're with them rather than against them. And that changes the whole energy of the interaction. It stops being an aggressive fight and starts being a relationship. And so it wasn't so much the techniques, because he didn't have much technique. It was really the principles he was working with that I learned from him.
That's incredibly profound. It's a matter of witnessing what's happening in the body and giving the body exactly what it needs in the moment, because it always communicates, and then just going with it.
I wouldn't put it that way, Antonia, because the way you're saying it sounds like someone external giving a body what it needs. But the way I'm putting it is that you're helping the body to become conscious of what it's doing anyway. And because when you become conscious, there's a potential for choice. And it's not that I know what I need, but I can, if I become conscious of what I am doing, I'm in charge. And in some way, I'm not my therapist, is it? But I'm in charge. My therapist isn't giving me anything. I can give something to myself.
I see. Okay, so it's just bringing the awareness, the consciousness to that spot, which
That's
makes
right.
the receiver more empowered as well, and they make them responsible of their experience. Yes, thank you for that correction. It was very insightful. I wonder if throughout your career, with of course considerations to the client's confidentiality, if there've been some very special moments that have stayed with you for the rest of your life after.
Oh, lots. Yes, lots. I mean, one of my major teachers, who I've talked about a lot in articles, is was a 5-year-old girl with cerebral palsy, and there was just one moment really that it changed my life as far as Shiatsu is concerned, because we were teaching her to walk with splints on, and she hated it and couldn't she couldn't cope with it, and she was crying and collapsing and just saying, I can't, I can't, I can't. And but I noticed that every time that she tried to make a movement, she did this sort of circular movement with her body. And so I suggested that she take the splints off, get the exercise, and just focus on that movement that she was doing. And suddenly she was swirling around the room like a top, and squealing with joy. And just had found a movement that she could do. And I realized that she'd been traumatized by her treatment, that in some way the treatment was giving her the message that there was something wrong with her, and that for a child, how she is how she is. It's like that's all of her. So she can't say there's something wrong with this bit of me. There's something wrong with me in my core. But finding something that she could do meant that she came from a place of I can rather than I can't. And that meant that her spirit was strong. And then she could go back to trying more challenging things from a place of I can. And then I thought, actually, this is true for everyone. Most people who go for therapy are really saying in some way, I can't. There's something wrong with me. Can you fix me? And so instead of trying to find out what's wrong with somebody and doing a diagnosis, my first thing in working with a client is to identify something that they can do, and some ability rather than disability, some sense of where their spirit is. And that's why it involves movement, because movement is something you can do. Well, if you're just lying flat, you don't know much about what you can do or not. So even if someone is very tense or protected, rather than saying this is something wrong, let's change it. You're saying it's very good protection. It's very good tension. Well done. You've been protecting yourself really well. And so that they take what they're doing and transform the view of their tense muscles into a positive view that actually, yeah, I'm doing something really well here. And that changes the whole way in which they look at themselves and look at their life. And then in a way, the treatment isn't necessarily to get rid of the tension. It's to help them to explore and to experiment, so that because sometimes the protection it still needs to be there. It's so anyway, that Lizzie was I mean, I've always called her Lizzie. That wasn't her real name, so it's sort of protected. But I always call her Lizzie, and she was one of my main inspirations.
What a wonderful story. Thank you very much for sharing that and emphasizing the ability of each person and how much things change when we start to focus on the things that we can do. And we understand that even that protection, the tension, and the tightness that we may hold in our bodies, which can come in many forms, not just as I'm describing it now, serves a purpose. And even though that purpose may not seem to be beneficial for us in that moment, it is very important. So accepting it and allowing it to show us the way towards a different direction is very important.
Mm.
On the other side of the spectrum, I wonder if you have any difficult moments that have stayed with you throughout your career.
Yes, I'm not sure I want to talk about them.
We can move past it if you don't prefer
Yeah.
it.
No, I mean, I think one of the difficulties, I talk about it in general. I think one of the difficult things for me has been being a teacher.
Mhm.
And dealing with, there's a sort of projection that people put onto teachers. And sometimes that can take the form of people falling in love with you, but which has always been difficult. But I think the main thing is there's a tendency in this culture for people to want someone to look up to. And it's never sat comfortably with me, and I've never known quite how to deal with it.
Mhm.
It doesn't seem enough to say, "Oh, thank you very much." It's and in some way, I've wanted to sabotage that guru making process. But then, in some way, I'm coming from my discomfort rather than from. It's not really teaching them something. If I say no, I'm not. To say I'm not wonderful or not anything. Doesn't really. So in some way, I'm still struggling with this, and I'm probably more skillful than I used to be, and it's something to do also that subtly I was inviting it, and I don't feel that I'm inviting it anymore. So it doesn't happen nearly so often, and most have a much more human relationship with my students now than I used to have, and I think that's helped that projection not to happen. But that's been one of the difficulties that I've had to cope with. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for mentioning that. I'm sure it's incredibly valuable for our listeners as well. If you were to describe Shiatsu to someone that has never heard about it before, how would you approach it? How would you describe it?
Well, I'd first of all say that what I describe of what I do is not what a lot of people think of as Shiatsu. And so what I think what I describe as I give some examples of what I do. That's the first thing. Just to see that it's actually something human, and then say actually what that's doing in general is that, and I think that East Asian medicine in general identifies certain functions of ourselves which maintain life, like and simple functions like when I'm hungry, I know I need to eat, but I can become aware at a much more subtle level of exactly what I need to eat or what I need in life. And so that's an example of the stomach function. And so that what I see my work as doing is helping people to be aware of those functions in themselves, and so that they can activate and use those functions to self-heal rather than be healed by a practitioner.
I appreciate how.
I wouldn't use the word energy.
Do you want to tell me more about that?
Yeah, I think energy is a word that causes a lot of confusion because first of all, in talking to people who've got a scientific mindset, and I used to be a theoretical physicist, so that includes me. The function of energy, I mean, energy is mindless in some way. And it's a simple concept, a simple phenomenon. One of the most basic laws of physics is the second law of thermodynamics, which basically says that things, as left to themselves, get more and more random and less and less ordered. And the more energy you put into a system, the more it gets disordered. So energy tends to go in the direction of disorder. While what we're talking about is I think more of information. I like to think of chi as being information, or ki as being information, not energy, because information does the opposite thing. It creates order, and creates structure, and maintains order, maintains life, and and the other thing about the word energy is it has resonance with things like electricity and things flowing through wires, and I really don't see chi like that at all. It's more to do with different parts of the body giving each other information. So if you think about information flowing through a wire, the carrier is electricity, but the actual thing that does the work is the information. And saying that it's energy that's doing the work of what we're doing in Shiatsu, I think is wrong. Maybe there's some form of energy that's communicating, it's the carrier of that information, but it's not the thing doing the work. So I'm sorry, that was a bit technical, but
no, not at all. It was actually very inspiring, and I'm sure we can spend a few minutes towards the end of our conversations to open the space for questions if you're comfortable with that. But I hear you. Using the word information makes a lot of sense based on the explanations that you've provided. I mean, it helps people understand it even better.
Yeah. And my research into meridians gives me a different view about meridians, so that instead of them being like wires along which some form of energy flows, I really don't see that at all now. I see them as I don't really want to go into the depth of this, but working with babies for a long time, I realized that the way in which movements developed, particular archetypal movements developmental movements developed, they developed exactly along the lines of the meridians. And not just that stomach meridian runs along the front of the body because you're going towards need, which often people, but these particular movements developed along the line, going through the nipple, and then came towards the center and down, and then out into the legs. And so it's like they follow the exact line of the meridians rather than just the general place. So my view of meridians now is not that they're channels of energy flow, but they are pathways, archetypal pathways along which the baby learns to inhabit their body and to use their body.
Wow.
And maybe they start off in the brain, in the motor cortex, as a sketch map of how the body is connected together, and then become embodied in the fascia through movement. Or maybe they're in the fascia to start with, I don't know. But I think it's to do with I don't see Qi like a form of electricity flowing through wires, but as information that is the body is talking to itself, talking, one part's talking to another and saying, how can we relate?
That's amazing. That's such a profound insight. I've made so many notes, and I'm going to research even more after our session. Because the way that you describe energy as information, and I'm coming back to the references that you've made throughout our conversation about having everything inside of you. So even through this, we can understand that we don't need anything outside of us to provide for our needs, and to make sure that we follow the path that is right for us.
We do need other people. We do need other people outside us, but not to rescue us.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the thing. Is to learn how to relate. That's really important. To learn how to love. To learn how, or to learn how to contain ourselves. To delay our gratification. We need other people. But the thing I'm saying is we don't need people to rescue us.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. We're moving towards the end of our conversation, and I'm quite conscious of your time. But if you allow me, I would like to ask you another question before opening the space.
Okay.
And I would like to know, what are your hopes for Shiatsu within the UK and beyond, not just within the UK?
I think what would help Shiatsu in the UK and beyond is to develop a style of something which is more stuff people can do at home, not treating each other, but using touch, using movement, using meditation, using Qigong as a part of their normal lives, so that they can, and to do courses on that for the general public, rather than focusing only on training practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we did that, then it could become much more widespread. While at the moment, with a 3-year course as a minimum, it needs a lot of commitment. People really need to be interested, and there's actually relatively few people. I see Shiatsu shrinking all over, not all over Europe. In France, it's growing. In Italy, it's growing. But in Switzerland, it's shrinking. In Spain, it's shrinking a lot. In Germany, it's shrinking. And in Britain, it's been shrinking for years. So I think we need to open it up to the general public rather than just to be practitioners, and then it can live.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that. John, Lane, Don, in case you would like to ask some questions before we go ahead, I invite you to do that. If anyone is watching the recording, you can leave your questions in the comments. It has been such an insightful conversation, Bill. I really appreciate everything that you've shared with us.
Thank you.
If there are no questions, I didn't see any microphones. No, okay. Dawn, I saw yours.
Something.
Okay, Dawn.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Bill. Hi, Antonio. Hi, John. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Dawn. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the conversation today. And in fact, after I joined your voice workshop quite a few years ago, it inspired me to study Shiatsu. So then I took up the diploma in London. Yeah.
Great.
So thanks for that.
I remember you at that. Yes. Yeah. Great. Nice to see you again.
It's powerful. Yeah. Thank you.
And nice to see you too, John. Again, I haven't seen you for years. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I was just going to say, listening to you reminds me of why I turned up to so many of your workshops over the years, because that idea of empowering people and not being the parent of the child, the guru and the sort of savior really appealed to me, and I thought that was hugely important in relating to the people who come to us, and that had a profound effect on me. I mean, there's so many things that came out of what you were saying. But one of the things that did always, I don't know, resonated with me so strongly is the way you talked about the body as a community, with every part having something to say, and that how brave, if you like, the body was to the brain's cowardice. The brain might not be able to cope with a strong emotion, but the body certainly could. I'd love to hear you just explain that to the wider audience again, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm certainly lots of people. I'm a multitude. And that's quite it's quite a traditional view nowadays that we've got loads of sub-personalities. But it's not exactly what I mean, because sub-personalities are all different aspects of our mind. We're sometimes like a vulnerable child, we're sometimes a strong teacher, we're sometimes a therapist, and sometimes a lover. But those all have their own stories, and they're basically different aspects of our, but they have their own posture. So if you really get it, sometimes what I do is I put chairs around for my different sides, and I sit in that chair and feel what the posture of that being is, and then from that part of me I can say what I need, what I want. But the important thing is, rather than getting into the story, of getting into the sensation of that, getting into the sensation of that part of me. And so I used to work with drama work for years, but one of the people who was most influential was someone called Keith Johnston, who wrote a fantastic book, which is still in print, called Impro. And he describes how to get into different characters by focusing on sensation and posture and voice and movement, and so that you can actually embody these different parts of you rather than just being ideas in the mind. And then what I think now is that I can do that with not only different sub-personalities, but different organs. I can become the character that is my stomach, the character that is my large intestine. And they can speak, or they can move. Sometimes they don't have words, but they can move, and I get information from that movement. And lately, I've been writing my book, which is actually coming to conclusion after 24 years.
Wow.
And when I first started writing it, and what I've come to through writing it is a sort of meaning of my life. It's like I was given all these different components at the beginning of my life, and in some way, the point of my life is how do they relate to each other? How can they find community? How can they develop harmonious relationship and collaborate, rather than being ruled from the head? Rather than being an autocratic society, they're a democratic society. So that's been my interest, to really embody the different aspects of the inner community, but also to help them to be democratic. And I think that's I'm coming to the end of my the last stretch of my life, as it were, the last 10 or 20 years. I don't know how much longer I've got, but I'm sort of feeling what have I been making with my life, and that's the most important thing, I think, is is this idea of feeling the inner community, embodying it and helping it to collaborate rather than be ruled autocratically.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, John, for asking that question, and thank you very much, Bill, for such a profound insight. One thing that came to my mind when you've mentioned the posture of a different part of you. I've been working quite a lot recently with a system called internal family systems. And the moment you mentioned that, I recognized the part of me that went into a specific position. I was like, okay, don't worry. I'm here to hold the space for you.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of different things that have come out of that exploration of drama that I think Keith Johnson was one of the pioneers, but also people like Moreno were developing psychodrama at the same time, and it's I think drama has got a lot to, when you embodied drama is something that could really come into the Shiatsu world in some way, because it helps people to feel their internal relationships, and that's and then you have family constellations and internal constellation work, and they're all derivatives of voice dialogue and all these things derived from that. And people talking about the inner village, they sometimes call it. So, and I think, oh, they think it's new, but I was exploring this in the 70s, so yeah.
No, it's certainly not new, but it's wonderful that it's coming to the surface more and more, because I believe that it's a useful tool as well.
I sometimes think of humanity like a mushroom, like a mycelium, and that there's lots of people working on similar things. They don't even necessarily know each other, but every now and again, these crop of mushrooms come out from the same network, underground network, and lots of people have the similar idea. So that's great.
It's wonderful to have access to that. Thank you very much for your wisdom, your time, your energy as information and resources. We really appreciate that you've accepted our invitation. And
great.
If there's anything else you would like to add before I close the recording, please go ahead.
No, it's lovely to see you all. Yes, and hi, Elaine. I didn't see you before when you had your picture up. Nice picture. But lovely to see you.
Thank you very much for joining, everyone.
Thank you, Antonia. Yeah.
Thank you. My pleasure. Please don't forget to catch the replay and to leave the questions in case you have them in the comments.
Great. Okay. Thank you.